Mr. Cartanga can come forward, please. Well, good morning. Again, I want to thank you so much for your patience. If you want to press the button, yep, for the
Okay.
green mic. So the green light for the mic. If you want to just start off, if you can do us a favors to just introduce yourself to us and just share what you believe you'll be able to add to our Port Authority Board.
Okay, I'll give you the short story. My name is Luis Cartagena. I grew up on 2221 Seymour Avenue, right between West 25th and Scranton. I've been on the port now. I think I got in there around the summer of 24, 25, towards the end there. I replaced someone. It's how I ended up on the port. And my background is I'm a CPA, have my own firm. It's located in the old Brooklyn area on Memphis Avenue. Been involved with many things in Cleveland. I've even done a stint as the inclusion officer for Cuyahoga County under, at that time, County Exec Budish. I've been involved with the Hispanic Business Center. I was the past chair of the Metro West CDC, led the transition between being a sister office to the Detroit Shoreway to becoming its own CDC there. I was still part of the board when we hired Dr. Lee, who's the current executive director. I used to be the board chair of the Hispanic Business Center when we actually did the resolution to do the Centro Villa project, and have been heavily involved with that project throughout the course. And as many of you were there with the grand opening last year. I'm a graduate of Lincoln West. Everything that I've done and still do civically is very heavily involved in Cleveland, specifically the Ward 14 area and Old Brooklyn neighborhoods. I, on my time at the port, when I was at the county, I spent some time with the Cuyahoga County Improvement Corporation, which dealt with a lot of the development work that was happening in the county. That's the committee that was approving finance deals for the county. Okay. And so now, as part of the port, I've been leading the Budget and Administration Committee and basically dealing with that committee and the budgets and going through some of the changes around operational wise as far as procedural items and digging deeper into how the money's being spent.
Thank you for that, Mr. Shumate. I know that you are here just coming. I just wanted to make sure I thank both of you all for your patience and coming back this week so that we can hear you. We are just getting started, and I'm going to have him ask a question, and then we'll come back to you to get you to do your introduction, okay? You could just wait. Yep. I'm going to start off with Councilman Casey to start off with some questions.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Madam Chairwoman, to Luis, I'm just going to call you Luis.
Yes.
Difficult last name for me to,
No
to say.
problem.
You and we're here at the last meeting, obviously, and so you know in the direction that I'm going to head this off at.
Yes.
My first question is, though, are you a Cleveland resident?
I am not a Cleveland resident. I live in North Ridgeville, and like I said, my business is in Cleveland, over on Memphis Avenue.
All right. So I'm going to touch on the prevailing wage from the port, and I know that neither of you who are at the table today were there for the vote.
Yes.
So I'm going to take it in a little different. But since our last meeting, I was really troubled to learn that only 30% of port finance projects are paying prevailing wage following the port's prevailing wage policy reversal. Why would a public agency undercut area standards for workers and reduce wages at a time of record inequality?
So my understanding of why it even came up for a vote was that the port at that time felt like they were missing out on supporting projects. I think their thought behind it was that the percentage that is being placed into the community investment fund is, we were missing out on opportunities to grow that portion of the money that we're giving out to local nonprofits and other entities.
All
I
right.
believe that's mostly what was
So,
behind that.
right, and Madam Chairwoman, to Luis, it sounds like it's quantity over quality, right, is what that sounds like. But do you intend to pursue the reinstatement of the 100% prevailing wage policy to ensure that we are undercutting standards of building trade workers across the region?
I would not be in opposition of union-friendly regulations.
All right, and then Madam Chairwoman DeLuise, do you support indexing the port's minimum wage requirement to inflation so that the lowest wage workers aren't left behind?
Yeah, I think that would make sense.
Okay.
I think that's something that has to go all around as well.
Okay. And then, Madam Chairwoman DeLuise, what is the footprint of the Cuyahoga County Port Authority?
My understanding is the county itself, Cuyahoga County, and the city.
Okay. And Madam Chairwoman DeLuise, and one of my issues here is that, you know, the port was set up for maritime, right? And they've
Correct.
gotten into private financing for other projects, even as far away as Toledo, right? When you have financed an art museum in Toledo. So, Madam Chairwoman DeLuise, can we get an assurance from members of the port who are representing the city of Cleveland, right? Because remember, that's where our footprint lies,
Right.
is the city of
Right.
Cleveland. Although I get the regionalism type thing, although
I get it.
Toledo is a little far away. Has the port changed from its original standards that when it was set up of being a maritime entity to becoming a private investing company for other projects?
No, I don't believe that the port has changed. I think that right now what we are looking at is having a marriage of the two spaces.
Okay.
Just as important as the development is the maritime work. That's exactly why we kept David on and kept him in his role and didn't backtrack.
Okay. And then my last question, Madam Chairwoman, to Luis is, obviously there's talk, right, that the port is going to somehow be involved with the boondoggle that's going on in Brook Park, correct? And the question is, will you support any public financing via the port for the Brook Park project?
So let me just say this. Sometimes the conversations are not at a board level and it's not with every board member. But I can tell you that I'm not afraid to vote no. I voted no several times on things that just don't make sense to me and have had to have serious communications and conversations afterwards because I was not on the winning side of that vote.
All right.
But with something like what you mentioned, my heart is always Cleveland first and what the residents of Cleveland want and need in these situations. And so that's the way that I would vote.
And Madam Chairwoman DeLuise, I think that's what I'm looking for. When somebody was here a couple of weeks ago and they were asked why you want to be on the port, right? The answer was, well, the chairman asked me, right? And I don't think that for me, for my vote, I'm looking for somebody who's just going to rubber stamp what somebody else is going to ask them to do. So I'm glad to hear that you're open to the idea of at least possibly, I don't want to say bucking the system, but having your own opinion and not being afraid to vote your own conscience and not the way that the leadership
Yeah.
of the port may want you
Look,
to.
what I can tell you about myself is my mom lives in your neighborhood. I have my aunt lives off Lawn Avenue. My sisters live in Old Brooklyn. I have too many people that I represent that are living in Cleveland that have no idea about the things going on in Cleveland. And so that I feel like it's my duty to make sure that they're living in a place that makes sense.
Well, and even,
so
even though you
when-
took off and left us and you're
No,
out in North
it's-
Ridgeville,
it's-
I still see that your heart and passion is in Cleveland.
It is. But, again, going back, when I was at the county, that's the way I had to work. Before that, I worked with minority businesses at GCP. Everything I do is based on making sure that the people that aren't in the room are represented.
All right.
And so, again, I'm not afraid to vote no on something or question or challenge why we want to go in a specific direction.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you so much, Councilman Casey. Now, Mr. Schumate, can you just take a couple of moments to introduce yourself and share, because this is a reappointment to the board, and if you can just share, what your presence has meant to the Port Authority and why we should, consider reappointing you.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning, Chair and other council members. I live in the city of Cleveland. I live in the Edgewater neighborhood. I work for a union contractor trade association that bargains labor contracts on behalf of employers with our labor partners. So we're 100%, union, prevailing wage, friendly. So my family grew up in the automotive industry that's supported by unions, and so that's near and dear to my heart, and is where my first inclination would always lean in. I've been in Cleveland about 35 years. I've worked initially for the Cleveland Indians at the old stadium to the new stadium. I worked for Destination Cleveland. I ran the Call and Post newspaper for a few years. And I've currently been at Construction Employers Association for the last 16 years. I've had a lot of opportunities to interface with city officials, staff, council, administration, county staff, administration. I have deep roots within the community, serve on a lot of community boards and organizations, and at the heart and soul for me is, kind of collaboration, community service, and really soft space for young people and trying to provide opportunities and development for them. I've been on the Port Board for about a year and a half, I believe. I think it was September of 24. So this is a reappointment. In my 2 years or year and a half there, I've gained greater understanding and appreciation for the port. I'm a logistics major by University of Toledo. I never worked in maritime, but I've worked in air freight, trucking, so transportation, goods and movement of services is important. So the thought of serving our community at a maritime role is important to me. I also have gotten more insight into the public financing opportunities and what it means for economic development within our community. And that policy or rule was enabled by, I believe, the state of Ohio. There's 88 counties and 68 or 70 have port authorities, and communities don't have maritime or water have port authorities, right? And they're really developed for economic development purposes. And I think our port, to my colleague, former or current board member with me on the Port Authority said, right, it's kind of opportunity for the port to both serve in a maritime role, but then also in a economic development finance role to help advance projects throughout Cuyahoga County. My understanding of the two things around the financing side of this is that when there was a prevailing wage policy, a lot of the projects stopped using the Port Authority and went other places to seek funding. In one respect, that's fine, good, project still happens, they go elsewhere to get the money, we're not supporting it. But what it hurts is it hurts the port's ability to bond, their bond ratings, I'm told. I'm not a finance person, right, but I'm told that you need to have a certain number of bonds per year in order to retain your bond rating status, which enables it for even projects that we would fund that might fit the need and mission of leadership and council and yourself, that the rating would decline if we weren't fully bonding all projects that we could. And the reason maybe why the port might bond something outside of Cuyahoga County is probably our bonding authority gives us the space that other communities may not have, for one, and secondly, it helps us with our bond rating. Again, we talked about a second ago that it helps us if we're bonding more projects, and that shows a greater propensity, if you will, for the port's bond and finance capacity. I think the third leg of the port, though, beyond maritime, and I guess it's associated with maritime, but we dredge the lakes and harbors, and then we take all the sediments that comes out and we put it in a containment space that's east of Burke Airport. And so that's one of our third major operations. But, you know, the Irishtown Bend was one that the port led to stabilize that hillside. And we're looking to build this other park with new dredge materials further down by 55th. So there's some other community service aspects that I think the port can find itself. And under our new leadership, and we're going through strategic planning now, we're looking to see what else can we do to really support Cleveland first, right, and as well as the county in terms of community participation and making sure that it's not just in the areas that don't need the funding where things happen, right, but the other areas of our community that we also want to look into to see how we can use the resources and tools we have to be of better service.
Okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I will go down now, Councilman Polensek.
Madam Chairperson, and to the two gentlemen who are here at the table. I'm going to just follow up on the line of questioning. One of the challenges that we have here, and I indicated this at the last committee hearing, is that we appoint people to the board, we reappoint, and then we never see them again. There's no dialogue with us. There's no indication that we exist as a collective body. And so I'm becoming more concerned about boards and commissions of individuals we appoint, and then, again, we never hear from them again. We don't get any feedback. And again, I'm concerned as well of projects that are being implemented or carried out by the Port Authority outside of Cuyahoga County. I don't think we should be doing anything outside of Cuyahoga County. I want the people on the Port Authority to understand that we need help in Cuyahoga County. The county's not growing in population. That's clear to everyone. It's not growing in population. We continue collectively, whether it be the city or the county, on the top of most negative lists. And I, for one, as a lifelong Clevelander, I am so disappointed every time I read one of these articles where Cleveland is rated, or where the county, highest taxes in the state, highest number of people that are in foreclosure, people who are delinquent on their property taxes. So we got big problems here. So what we got to do, we got to focus. We got to become more focused on what's important. And I want to say specifically, I want to focus on the east side of the city, because we need help. We need help on development projects. So this is what I'm going to be looking for, and I suggested to the council president that we get the new port director here, Jeff Epstein, who I had a good relationship with him when he worked for the administration. I think he's a very competent individual. So, but we need to build bonds. We need to build partnerships with the port as it pertains to how developers, how projects in our communities can take advantage of the support that the Port Authority can give to us. This got to be all hands on deck. I'm really concerned about the area. I'm concerned about the region, that we're losing ground. I drive out to Medina County. I go out to eastern Lorraine. I look at all that development taking place in those areas. Northern Summit. It's like, whoa. It's just incredible development that's taking place outside of Cuyahoga County. And I want to see an aggressive Port Authority. So I'm not going to belabor the point, but we need to have a more parochial outlook on the port.
Could I make a comment?
Yes.
So that's part of what we
Yep.
envisioned with the hiring of Jeff.
Yeah.
Our thought was to have better communication with not only the city but the county.
Right.
That was part of our thinking when we were looking over
Okay.
resumes and everyone we interviewed. But more specifically, one of the tools that we have is that community investment fund, and we recently actually used it as a bridge loan for 2 women-owned businesses in the East 55th St. Clair area
Okay.
to assist them with the purchase of a building where right now both companies, there's 2 companies, both of them renting their spaces, and they came together to collaborate to purchase one building, and the port is supporting that bridge loan while
Good.
they're finalizing that. And that's the kind of stuff that we're looking
Right.
to do, and we're completely open to having way better communication with the council.
Okay. Well, the proof will be in the pudding.
Right.
And we'll see, because I suggested they come to a caucus meeting so we can start to build bridges. So the other thing is that if you can provide us, we said this to the previous people as well, tell us what you can do. I think most people don't know, most businesses in the city don't know what the port can do for them. So there needs to be a pamphlet, a brochure, something that we could pass out at our neighborhood business meetings, at our CDCs, whatever the case may be. We need, I find there's a great lack of communication in many of our neighborhoods with many of our business people. They just don't know what's available to them because they don't have the time to hire accountants and attorneys and do all this stuff. They're
Right.
trying to keep a roof over their head. They're
Right.
trying to run their business, especially if it's a family-owned business. They're trying to drive that. So again, I'm not going to belabor the point.
Okay.
The fact of the matter is better communications, better contact. We're all in this thing together. If we can't figure out how to grow Cuyahoga County, God help us. I'm going to tell you that right now, because I'm seeing things when I go into other outside of this county and I see the development taking place, and I keep saying we're not going to stop that. We're not going to stop that. But we got to figure out how to be on the same playing field. We got to be able to be competitive. Cuyahoga County's got to be competitive with other regions, portions of the state. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you. Councilman Casey.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. The levy that the Port Authority receives from Cuyahoga County residents, that goes toward just maritime stuff, correct? The tax levy does not help to offset your, what I would call the secondary business model of the port in financing other projects.
I'm not sure. I mean, I was going to say to our
Yeah.
finance chair of our board how those. My understanding, Luis, is that the dollars are more on the operational side
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
of operating the port staff, inclusive of maritime. The financing, I believe, is sort of their staff that does that and is paid, but it's pretty much self-contained. That the bonds, there's a fee, bond fee, if you will, that is charged, and those generate dollars back to the Port Authority for its operations. The operating levy, though, I do believe is, you could almost say it's probably 2 main purposes. One is sort of operations of port, but number 2 is that there are times that we get grants, be it the state of Ohio or the federal EPA, and we have to have a match. And so I know that that match, the levy dollars potentially are used for helping us match some of those, whatever the percentage might be that the port is responsible for.
Right, and just on Councilman Polensic's point, maybe we need to become more educated on the port and their role, because when 2 weeks ago, when you sent over the list of your projects and you guys are financing something in Toledo and you're financing Sherwin-Williams and, these other big projects, we want to make sure that our levy dollars aren't going toward those types of financing projects that the port have taken on.
Yeah, those
And,
aren't,
and,
'cause
and
those
again,
are strictly
this is
on the
going to, this
bonds.
is more of an educational thing for the port to educate the council. Then my last question, it can just be a yes or no, is will you, as board members representing the city of Cleveland, will you bring back up the prevailing wage issue to the board and have that conversation, or at least try to reinstate the prevailing wage for
Yes,
projects?
to the point of yes or no.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you so much for that. Just a couple of questions as we will round this out. First, really wanted to, this conversation of a lot of people not knowing what the Port Authority actually does. What ideas do you all have to communicate the work and share this information with a broader audience of individuals who may actually benefit from some of the things that the Port Authority is doing?
Chairwoman House and Council, you know, the last few years, last year and a half anyway, I would say for certain, have been the board really saying, I think, to staff and leadership that we need to do a better job of both collaborating and communicating, but also, well, both collaborating and communicating. There is a relatively newer person on board in charge of our communications efforts, who I think has done a very nice job, but we know we have to do a better job, and I think our efforts are to be able to do that. Luis commented on a community impact fund that was established a few years ago that was really meant to position a port to do smaller opportunity projects, to support smaller community, neighborhood, and you know, opportunities. We pivoted this year really to support the Cleveland Building Supply, or the building that's on 55th, for two individuals, where we say, how can we be more catalytic with our efforts? I think our board, working with staff, you'll see that to be more important outcomes for us to not just service the $50 million projects, but also to look at how can we, and I've asked a few times at council, at board meetings and in between, how can we support small neighborhood projects? How can we support small developers, not the large developers, but I think it's important that we build the ecosystem and support all neighborhoods. How can we take a look at closed school buildings, Councilman Plinsick, right, in neighborhoods, and what can we do to support the redevelopment of those? I mean, I'm hopeful that we as an organization can begin to look at that. We did take a field trip, if you will, down to Cincinnati, drove down and back same day, to look at what they're doing in terms of Cincinnati, where they're investing in homes and neighborhoods in a catalytic way. And I think there's seems to be interest from both board and staff in seeing that the port opens up its toolbox more to helping small and neighborhood projects succeed, not just the larger ones. And so we will do a better job both, I think, in supporting small business, small projects and developers, as well as communicating better what tools we have in our toolbox, where we can help and how we can help. And I think I'm committed, Luis and many of our other board members are committed to that same mission. I wholeheartedly agree that our, you know, and I've said this, I serve, you know, kind of based on my appointing authority, right, the city council and the city administration, and that I would want to uphold those values of the council and administration, right? I may have one view or feel, but the will of my appointing authority should lead with that, and I think that, I believe that should be true of all appointments of the city and the county, that their appointees should understand the values and the mission. And so I would want to be able to understand your will and the administration's will in terms of best interest.
When I became a board member, that was part of what I wanted to identify, was how to better position the port for people to understand what they actually do, because again, as I did a lot of work with Centro Villa, and the port was not involved in that. And that was questions that I had from the beginning. And so I know that for the last 6 months, every board meeting has started with an organization coming into our board meeting and presenting on what their organization does. It's a way for us to learn more about other organizations that are in the spaces. As well as I know that when Jeff came aboard, he made it a mission to start meeting with as many organizations that he could to make sure that we're tying and connecting the dots, so to speak, on the tools that we have to make life easier for them. That's how the East 55th and Superior Avenue CDC ended up coming through with that project. It was based on those type of meetings. So we're continuing those as we continue on with our work.
And my question about that project was, is the councilwoman informed? Does she know about it? Does the CDC support it, right? Because it shouldn't just be the will of one or two people, right? It should be that we're talking with community and public officials as well as yourselves, because council staff.
And thank you for that. You stated a question of, as board members, being representative of the city, having a very clear understanding of what like the mission vision is for that entity, can you share what your understanding is of the vision from the city of Cleveland's perspective?
Sure. For me, I'd say it's, I understand that prevailing wage is an important matter. I understand that the community benefits in terms of community engagement, community opportunity for businesses and workers to be involved in projects, and that we need to do a better job of both engagement but also collaboration and really helping with the resources we have, both to educate young people, to create and foster jobs for adults, to help support neighborhood growth and development. And again, I think it's going to those are top line areas. I think we have, at least in our new leader, Jeff Epstein, a person who understands more of the will and the operation of the city. May not have been as close of an alignment previously, but we do believe when we selected Jeff, to Luis's point earlier, that we felt that he could be a Cleveland leader, right? Not a person from outside of the community that didn't know Cleveland, that didn't have the heart and soul of Cleveland. And so we hope that we'll continue to develop closer relationships. Those would be my thoughts about what I think the will and the mission, if you will, of the city would be.
Mr. Cartanga?
So for me, I've always felt like our mission has been to grow Cleveland and the area. And so that's also from the maritime perspective to all of the projects that we need to start looking into supporting within the city as well.
Okay. Final question. If reappointed to the Port Authority, what do you think success would look like over the next year?
Oh, for me, I can honestly tell you success would be that we have outlined and seen a growth in minority developers and underrepresented developers actually utilizing the port and its tools.
Okay.
That's first and foremost for me, and I think that sometimes that's part of the issue. We're not supporting our own and doing things and making things bigger, and there's so many smaller projects that we still fight for and we still get them done, and they make such an impact, and I would love to see the port being supportive of those type of projects.
Okay.
I'd concur. I think we're just embarking upon our strategic plan, which will follow for the next 2 to 3 years, and I think a lot of that, at least the tenor from board and even staff leadership, is that we want to, as I said earlier, open up our tools in our toolbox to help smaller neighborhood projects, to be more catalytic, not just with large projects. And I guess I'm speaking outside of downtown, right? How do we get into the neighborhoods and identify areas we can help? Now, we the cliche, we can't be all things to all people, but I think where we can have more impact, and how can we outline what the opportunities and have programs that are clearly understood, right? That you can take back to your constituents, you can take back to your neighborhoods and wards, and ensure that your residents understand it. I mean, I think that there's a willingness on the part of the port to go out to speak at your meetings in your wards to talk about what does the port do and how does it fit? How does maritime work? How does the financing of projects work? How might there be ability for us to bundle projects so that it makes financial sense for us to support neighborhood projects? It's not our, it's not beyond what I think our interests are. We just have to figure out how we can achieve that. So success would look like our ability to convey and communicate better with neighborhoods and have more community projects at smaller levels happen, and to ensure that Cleveland residents and businesses are participating in the opportunities which we're a part of.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much. Are there any other questions, these candidates?
So moved.
All right, Madam Clerk, can we call the roll for the mayor's appointments committee consideration for the mayor's appointment of Louis Cartinga to the Cleveland Cuyahoga County Port of Authority? Yes.
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 I'll get to this later. Excuse me. Next, we will have mayor's appointment consideration for Mr. Glenn Shoemate for the mayor's appointment to the Cleveland Cuyahoga County Port Authority. Yes.
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 All right, thank you, and congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay.
Okay, so we have, I think, 2 reappointments and 1 new appointment to the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority. I am going to take the reappointments first. So, Miss Emily, you're going to be last by yourself, okay? All right, so can we have Mr. Jeffrey Sleesman and Miss Anastasia Elder to please come forward? All right. Thank you all so much for your time and your patience. Either one of you all can start to tell us about yourself and why you believe you all should be, why you should be reappointed to the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority.
Good morning or afternoon, Councilwoman, Madam Chair. My name is Jeffrey Weston Sleesman. I've lived in Cleveland most of my life. I grew up in Councilman Polensic's ward. I left for a while, came back in 2014. I lived downtown for 10 years and now live in Glenville. I joke with the chair that I lived across the street from her ward when I lived downtown, and I live across the street from her ward now. But each time, just barely missed out. I've served on the board of the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority for 3 years. I was appointed by Mayor Bibb in 2023, originally appointed in 2022, but there was a year delay there. I would be very pleased on all accounts and all levels to continue to serve, to address Councilman Casey and Councilman Polensic's questions for Mr. Shoemate and Mr. Cartagena. I'm Cleveland first in pretty much everything I do. I radiate out from my neighborhood to the city to the county. We do serve the entire county, but I'm a city appointee, and that's my priority. And RTA, or transportation in general, is very important to me. I entered that world via economic development, and I saw how important it was to cities in general, and Cleveland specifically, to have functional transit to the quality and the health of the neighborhoods. And so that is where I come from in my service. And RTA is going to go through a rough patch here, but we hope to come out the other side of it healthier and better so that we can better serve the city specifically and the county in general.
Is that good? Hear me? All right. I feel like I'm shorter than the mic. Good afternoon, I believe. My name is Anastasia Elder. Obviously, currently serving on the Greater Cleveland RTA board and have been since July of 2024, I believe. In my day job, I serve as an associate at UB Greensfelder law firm here in downtown Cleveland. A large part of And let me just say, in that role, I do complex business litigation. So I represent a lot of companies on their breach of contract, employment issues, et cetera, other general business matters. I've always been a Clevelander. I grew up in the Bel Air Pierce as well as West Park communities, and I currently live in downtown Cleveland, where I have for approximately the last 7 years. I've always been a writer of RTA from the time of when I was in Bel Air Pierce. If I was going downtown to go shopping with my mom, whether it was going to John Marshall High School, whether it was going to my summer job at my church, and now just generally accessing the city. So I value it as a writer from that standpoint. But I also believe that, as a lifelong resident of Cleveland, I always anticipate supporting this city. As Jeff mentioned, I mean, we're both Cleveland appointees, and I always plan to pay, I want to pay my taxes here, I want to stay here, I want to use my talents in the city of Cleveland, and I feel best suited to do that here on the RTA board, aside from what I do in my regular work. You know, RTA has a lot of great things coming its way with rail cars, et cetera, but as Jeff also mentioned, there are some challenges, and I would really appreciate the opportunity to serve in this role and help work through those things and navigate the various different factors that will come into play over the next 3 or so years.
Okay, I will open it up. Councilman Casey.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Madam Chairwoman to Ms. Elder, I think you left the best part of the city. But it's glad to know that you're still in the city of Cleveland.
My parents are still in West Park, so
All right.
there you go.
And it's good to see that you're both Buckeyes, right?
Absolutely.
You both went to Ohio State. I don't know, the only route that I really know about RTA is the 22, because it's what I always took. But there's been a lot of chatter recently about the 10 route, right? And the cutting of the services of the 10 route. And that's, from what I'm understanding, the 10 route is predominantly east side to get people downtown. Can you touch on the board's decision, if there has been one, to cut that 10 route?
Sure, I can speak to that. Since the 10 goes through my neighborhood, the 10 goes north-south, actually from close to, if not in Councilman Polensik's ward, to University Circle, and then down 93rd, I believe, south of University Circle. The cuts that would take place are weekend frequency, so weekday would stay the same, but the weekend frequency would decrease. That's under consideration. That's not finalized. There'll be hearings next week
Beginning April 13th.
about some of the cuts that are being proposed right now. The 10 has seen an increase in ridership over the last few years, likely due to the number of jobs that have been in University Circle have been increasing over the last decade or so. It's now, I believe it's actually the only concentration of jobs in terms of jobs hubs that has grown over the last 10 years is the Health Tech Corridor and University Circle. So it is at the same time frustrating to see it be cut, and also is representative of just the budgetary concerns right now for the authority as a whole. The proposed cuts have to happen somewhere. The approach that the authority took, I think, is the correct one in terms of trying to cut as little as possible and then as much on the margins as possible, which is reflected by the fact that the proposed cuts to the 10 are going to be on the weekends and not the weekday. It is, however, frustrating to see a route that rose in ridership and goes on to an important job hub along north-south on the east side be proposed to be cut. Like I said, that is the 1, 3, and 10 are the most proximate to my home. And so it is frustrating to see a cut, but I do understand that it's a sticky situation budgetarily right now, and that something has to give, at least in the short term. And I would love to see any of those marginal cuts be reversed as soon as possible if there is additional revenue added in the next couple of years.
And then, Madam Chairwoman, to our candidates, what route in the city of Cleveland is the busiest route? Has the most riders?
I would say.
Do you mean for bus, rail, or
Or
For,
rail.
for bus,
For bus, it's the Health Line.
the Health Line, the Euclid Avenue?
I would echo that, and I would say from Rapid Trent, I would say the Red Line
Line is
has by far most ridership.
Okay. In my ward specific, I'm home to 2 RTA stations, right? I have Triscuit and
West Park.
Puritas,
Yeah.
right? And then West Park is right, the railroad track is the dividing line. But then I'm also right adjacent to the Brook Park one. One of our biggest complaints are lack of cleanliness at the stations and homelessness, right? So, Madam Chairwoman, to our presenters, as board members, what would be your role in, one, trying to secure the safety of our riders at the stations themselves, and then 2, what role does the board play in trying to deal with homelessness? Like, the city of Cleveland has taken that initiative on. What has RTA done to address that?
Yeah, so I would say, first and foremost, from the authorities' perspective, I would say that safety and cleanliness is a priority, right? We are constantly evaluating those, and I would say, we look at, what the agency is actually doing to address those things, understanding, there's the personnel needed to address those those issues. There are also just the frequency in which some routes have folks on them and our ability to keep up with the demand of ridership also. So it's definitely at the forefront, and we're definitely aware of it, whether that be through public comment, whether that be through our strategic plan as a pinpoint of focus. And I would say just from the board's perspective, I think our role in specific to cleanliness and safety is that we ensure that we are driving those things as priorities from a board perspective, as well as from the staff's perspective as well. We are not perfect, admittedly, and I as a rider also know that we are not perfect, but I know that we are constantly thinking of, what ways, what new ways, how can we improve our current structure to ensure that we are staying abreast of the issues that present themselves, and that our ridership and those who don't ride know that we are focusing on those things, because overarchingly our goal is to also increase ridership, right? And so we're not only wanting to listen to the needs of our existing riders, but also those who quite frankly don't ride or only ride when there is an event.
Did you want to touch on it?
I was just to the councilman through the chair. I was just going to say, on the one level, we're not a managing board, so some of the granular things we would be more disruptive on any given specific issue on a given day. We'd be more disruptive if we started to take attention away by pointing them out, because they'll answer to us, right, if we actually raise a flag on a given thing. On more general problems, however, that is exactly from a strategic point of view what we should be guiding the authority on. For example, with the issue of unhoused people, either in a station or on the network, we would likely not serve anyone well by attempting to become an authority, like a body that addresses homelessness. And then this comes from the strategic standpoint of from where the board can play a role. We can make sure that the collaboration with whatever entities necessary is facilitated. We're out there in the community on a regular basis. This particular board is very active and will be seen around town, and we can make some of those connections and make sure that they're functional, and see where 2 + 2 can equal 5 to solve some of those issues.
And through the chair, I would push back just a little on the philosophy of homelessness, because it is your property, right? And it does take a village, right? So you're not the ones who get the call when people are trying to get on the station and they're addressing the uncleanliness, they're addressing homelessness, So I think everybody has a part in this, and sometimes if it comes from the top down, i.e. the board, then that I just don't want to close off every possible alley that we would have.
To the councilman, to the chair, yes, to clarify, yes, we have to take care of our property. And if we're dealing with that, folks have to go somewhere after, even if we deal with our property. And that's where we could very quickly have a big mission creep if we try to.
No, I get that, but sometimes you got to take on a role that you don't want to, because it's the right thing to do too, right? I mean,
I would say that's the role.
Right. So when I get a call, I can't just say, "Oh, well, that's RTA's problem."
Right.
It's their property. I have to deal with it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And other council members have to deal with it as well. So I'm just asking for you guys to be a little bit, more conscious of that, or maybe strategically partner with somebody to come up with a plan so that when we do run into those situations, that we have a path forward on how to address it. And then my last question, Madam Chairwoman, is, did RTA have anything to do with the closing of Greyhound?
No.
No, you guys didn't Because I know at one point they wanted to move them to the Puritas Rapid Station, and we intervened, but RTA had nothing to do with losing Greyhound.
No.
All right, thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councilwoman Santana.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I serve Ward 14 near Westside by Metro Health, and I am very aware of the 25 Connect plan. I know that we've been in discussion for several years. So I'm curious to know, in your view, on West 25th, do you think this will eventually be a model for transit-oriented development on Cleveland? And if not, like, how could we help improve that? How could we help align with the plan as it is right now?
I'll take that first. Through the chair to the councilwoman. Yeah, I mean, I would take a step back and say, Cleveland is already a model for BRT, and then looking at how that connects to transit-oriented development, TOD. I would say that the West 25th project overall will be looked at highly by our partners, considering, after the success of the Health Line, this is an expansion of that. And so I foresee it being at the forefront. So I don't think that this is a matter of, trying to convince others that it is. This is certainly an on the brink not technology, but project that will only continue to grow, not only in the Cleveland area, but overall. And so I think you can be confident from that respect. There are already a number of businesses that are along that corridor. We've had a number of public meetings to take to get buy-in from not only business owners but others. And so I really see this project being great not only for the area but for the region overall, from an economic standpoint, from a mobility standpoint, et cetera. So.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then my next question is, I'm sure you guys have heard there was a lot of businesses, right, complaining about the parking. And so I'm curious to know, we all know that the majority of our residents use the RTA, right? They don't have a car. I'm curious to know how that is being navigated with bike lanes, with, parking in front of these businesses. Any education that you could offer right now, and let us know where are you guys at in the process of that planning.
To the councilwoman, through the chair, my understanding is that bus lanes will be maintained through the majority of the corridor and will be maintained at Market Square where it was contentious. My understanding is also that for that portion of the route, when there's not a lot of width to the street to work with, that bus and bike will be shared in that area, and that where there's more space further south, it's a different story when it comes to how bike lanes could be handled. And then the issue parking in the area of Market Square is underutilized in general, and so there should not be a negative effect of losing street parking in front. And to be honest, it was never available anyway. It was always right in front of the businesses. It was always full. You couldn't get parking there reliably anyway. And there's acres of parking behind Westside Market that's available. There is a detail that will be worked out with the city, with city planning and probably MoCap when it comes to deliveries and pickup of like Uber Eats, those kinds of things. But that spaces can be designated for that, and that RTA is open to after hours or all weekends to having delivered. Like there can be certain closures in certain places that don't interrupt service. It was really daytime rush hour service that was a huge choke point. I've also in meetings when we were talking about that, the contentiousness was at Market Square. There was $500,000 of additional safety infrastructure that was added to make sure that everyone's pedestrian safety was taken a look at. I have stated in multiple meetings, I believe this is on public record, that RTA and the city should both have those improvements in mind when it comes to points further south on the corridor, especially as Centro Villa hopefully becomes a huge success story, and then as the property across the street hopefully becomes developed as well. If there's crossings there, that we can learn the same lessons and perhaps add additional pedestrian safety if that becomes an issue when it comes to crossing and any other points along the corridor. Hopefully it will become a model when it comes to TOD. Hopefully there will be a lot more pedestrians, a lot more what comes with that is crossing, and that we have to keep an eye on what safety along the corridor looks like long term.
Got it, thank you. And this is my last question that I asked everyone. You know, as you both seek reappointment, like what are you most proud of in your accomplishments while serving on the board? And what are your, you know, maybe that one goal that you would like to achieve if you get reappointed in your next term?
I would just say that I'm most proud of being an advocate and a voice, you know, for RTA in spaces where it's not a public meeting, and spaces where there aren't people who are calling us directly. And by that I mean whether it's just in the business community, whether it's with friends and family, or those that I interact with in other ways. I'm most proud of being in a position to know what's going on and to be able to articulate and address, you know, whatever people have as concerns, or direct them to the people that do have the answers that they can have a more in-depth conversation about. I think that going forward, should I so gracefully be reappointed today, you know, I hope to really see the rail car program move forward. I look forward to seeing our existing customers excited for what that looks like. I'm uber excited to hopefully get those who don't ride to want to ride, because the new rail cars will address some of the concerns I think that some have had. And I think that also as we approach new challenges, I'm excited about working through those challenges. You know, identifying what is the issue, what is our goal, what are the steps we're going to take, who are the partners that we're going to work with. So that personally excites me, and I look forward to that process.
Got it, thank you. Jeffrey?
To the council and through the chair,
You're on it.
I have a general answer, which is I'm proud to be a regular rider. I haven't owned a car since 2014. We do have one car in my household now, but we left downtown, and I managed to make my life work just fine without buying a second car. And frankly, if we'd bought one, then it comes to, do I go fewer places in Cleveland? Do I spend less of my money in Cleveland? Which is why I was trying to avoid it. And as a regular rider, I can advocate for that experience on a regular basis. That's something that I don't think either RTA or transit in general is unique to this, that sometimes the technical experts aren't always using whatever they're a technical expert of. And I can appreciate that point of view, and I also can say, for riders. To Councilman Casey's point, I can say, hey, I'm at this station on a regular basis. I'm at this stop on a regular basis. This is how this is. Maybe don't respond just to me and my stop, but respond to this issue that I'm seeing on a regular basis on the network. And then to Councilman Polensic's point, when Mr. Shoemate and Mr. Cartagena were here, I'm also proud to be a Clevelander in the riding. It is a county-wide authority, and it should serve the entire county, and my priorities for Cleveland and the service for the residents of the city of Cleveland. I want to see that infill. I want to see that financial health for the authority and for the city and county and the tax base. And to get some of that, the geometry only works if transit works well. So to constantly advocate for, frankly, my neighbors and myself, given where I live, is what I'm most proud of.
Okay. Through the chair to the councilwoman also, I think ultimately, Jeff and I would both agree, you know, I want people to love transit as much as we do. We want them to ride. We want them to be with us when challenges hit. We want the buy-in from the community. We know that people generally value transit as to exist, but we really want them to understand that, you know, it's for everyone when it works and when we're all in it for it to work. So.
Yes, got it. If you would let my son's dream is to ensure that he never owns a car, and he is able to get to his job and to the bars and everything, you know, and he's a big Europe, fan, and it's because they don't have, you know, they have good transportation there. So hopefully we'll get there one day.
We will.
Thank you.
Councilman Polensik.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, and to the two representatives that are here from RTA. I think one of the challenges that you have, both of you have today, you are sitting on a board that historically, going back years, made some, not you, but I mean, and not anybody who with remotely close, that an agency and an authority that made some very bad decisions. And the problem is you're saddled with that today, the reality. And so when we look at other cities where you can get on their systems, their what they call their metro or their regional or whatever, and you can go way outside of the core city. So suburbanites, suburbanites can come in, but also residents who live in the urban area can then go out as well to seek those job opportunities. And so when you look at RTA, and you realize when you look at the red line and Windermere, that should have gone to Lake County. There should have been a route going to the southeast side of the county, to the northwest side of the county, beyond the airport. I mean, just bad decisions that were made by leadership 50 years ago and 60 years ago. And that's the challenge that those of you who sit on the RTA board today have to contend with, because in most areas of Cuyahoga County, it's usually get in a car and come downtown than it is to get on a bus. And then you have people refer to RTA as, you know, return to the automobile in some neighborhoods or some areas of the county because of the lack of buses or light rail. So if you can tell me, what's the status of the lakefront line?
To the councilman, through the chair, I believe right now it operates on weekends. And among the proposed service cuts would be to not run it.
Not run it at all?
For the time being.
Okay. I mean, again,
To clarify, until some of that gets developed.
Yeah, well, don't hold your breath on that one.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, again, there's a prime example. I was here, we didn't make that decision in the council, but I remember when that decision was made, and at that time it cost $80 million to do it. And I could never figure out why you would run a light rail from Tower City to a parking lot and just stop it there, just end it there. And so, just again, bad decisions one after another. And my observation is today, not just in here at the city, but in the county, we just cannot continue to make bad decisions anymore. We've got to figure out how to make decisions that really have an impact on stability in growing our local economy and growing investment in our city. So I don't have the kind of hubs that some of my colleagues have. I don't have a Cleveland Clinic in my neighborhood or a UH or University Circle. I'm at the edge of the city, so my folks are dependent upon bus service. So we'll see how the impacts on number 10 will affect my neighborhood. But I'm trying to really, as I've stated in some of these hearings, we need to build relationships with RTA board members and the council. Because again, we appoint, we never see anybody anymore. If my life depended on it, I couldn't tell you who sat on the Port Authority or on RTA, and I'm the senior member of this body. So what I'm going to request through the chair, I should ask this when the two other folks were here from the port. I'd like to get from the Port Authority and from RTA, I'd like to get all the board members, their emails, and their contact information. I don't think that's too much asked. My stuff is public. All my contact information is public. So when we do have issues in our neighborhoods, I can write the folks at RTA, but I'd like to CC board members so you can see what some of my concerns. I do this right now, Regional Sewer District. I contact board members to make them apprised of some of the issues I'm confronting, especially what I experienced in the last couple of weeks with flooding issues. But we need to build this relationship. We need to build fact, and hopefully, as I suggested to the council president, every now and then, that we bring RTA in so you can give us some heads up. What's going on? What are your challenges? So you can hear what some of our challenges are as well in our neighborhoods. I'm trying to do everything I can to maintain a stable and quality neighborhood. And I find today My challenges are greater today than ever before because people have options. They have options, and they can go elsewhere. There's nobody that has a ball and chain on their leg in the city of Cleveland. If they have the financial wherewithal, they can go elsewhere, as we've seen, unfortunately, too often over the years. So we all have to be figuring out what do we do? What do we focus on to stabilize neighborhoods? What do we do, let's say, to increase ridership? What do we do to make people believe again in our city and in our neighborhoods? We need believers. I'm a firm believer that we need believers in our neighborhoods. That's what's going to make a difference. We have to have folks that are say, you know what, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, I'm going to support whatever I can, local businesses, investment, and go forward. And so my rub with RTA, I understand the financial challenges you have, but some of the most, it might be mundane to some people, but you know, they move bus stops, they don't tell anybody. They move bus stops and it's like, well, we find out about it after the fact. I had just one recently, they moved it, put it on the side of a hill, a grassy hill, and you had to stand out in the street to use the bus. It was like, who in the hell at RTA came up with that one? To put the bus stop on the side of a hill, and there was no place for people to stand. Who was thinking of that? Who made that call? And then I had to get, fortunately, I got a contractor to go out and put a little place, cut a little indent into the side of the hill where people can stand. You know, this little 2-foot wide section. I was like, come on now, really? No one was thinking about that at RTA or whoever was making that decision of where they move the stops. I had those same problems up on 185th Street with moving stops. And again, no communication to me. So if we could receive that information, and I would also ask if we could get the top echelon of RTA's information as well, Madam Chairperson, because there might have been changes, so I want to make sure I have all the right contact people. I'm here to build partnerships. I'm here to build unity where we can, because we're all in this together. I understand the challenges that you have, believe me. If it's not accessible, if it's not easy for people to go somewhere, they're going to seek other routes. And this is the same argument I had with CMSD with closing schools, and when they moved Max Hayes farther west, our kids were going to have to take 2 and 3 buses to get to Max Hayes. They weren't going to do that. It ain't going to happen. They're going to figure out. They're going to go to charter schools. They're going to go wherever they can. If we want people to use RTA and families to use RT, it's got to be convenient. It has to be convenient for them. Or not, they're not doing it. I can tell from my own experiences. My youngest son was at STEM, and you know, he was able to get on right there on 185th at Muldoon's and go down to STEM, and he was able to come back and get dropped off on the corner. Again, it was convenient for him, for STEM High School. But then the other folks who would like to maybe go someplace else or have opportunities, and it's not convenient, then they're going to find somewhere, a family member, someone who can drive them there. That's the reality. So I look forward to getting that information, Madam Chairperson. I hope to see you guys at a caucus meeting sometime within the near future so we can build bridges. We can get to know one another. We're all in this together at the end of the day. I'm convinced of that. More so than ever before in my time here, we're all in the same boat together. Okay? Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Yes, thank you so much, Councilman. Just a FYI, everyone's contact information is included in everyone's resume that
Okay.
everyone should have, and
Okay.
so that should be a way
Okay, well-
for people to be connected to
Gotcha.
everyone who is
Okay.
coming for in front of our committee.
Thank you.
And yeah, if to the councilman, through the chair, if I may, just a minute.
Yes.
I think we should do that systemically.
Right.
Also, to speak for myself, I'm available. The councilwoman sees me at meetings. The council's chief strategist has my cell phone number. We've known each other for 20 years. I can be your first text, not a problem. Councilman Conwell has my cell phone.
Good.
I'm around.
Right.
Conwell's your councilman?
Yeah.
Yeah, my condolences. Go ahead.
Well, you stepped out. I grew up on Grovewood between 152nd and 156th, and I know the pain. When I was a kid, we could just walk out. Well, I didn't look at the schedule. I just walked out to the corner of Lakeshore and Grovewood,
Yeah.
and hopped on the 39, 39X, 39BX. That runs now every half hour, I believe, and
Yeah.
it stops at 5 or 6 p.m. I couldn't even take it in the weekend. I had many options when I was a kid that I don't have now, and it's exactly that. It's not convenient, and I don't have those options any longer.
Yes.
And that's what we need to reverse.
Okay, thank you.
To the councilman through the chair, I'm equally as available. I will say that my contact information on my resume is different than the contact information you should use, but I can be reached at my RTA email, which I can provide all this information directly to you, as well as my work as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, so for a point of clarification, so that's probably what we'll do. Ibukun, if you could just note, we will get create a list of all of our appointees thus far and going forward, to make sure that we have the appropriate contact information, because emails, public versus private, is a whole
Yeah.
thing. So I want to be clear that we get the correct contact information and build a contact information for council members, okay? All right,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Councilman Shaw.
Good morning, good afternoon. Sorry for my delay. To the committee and through the chair to our nominees, thank you for your time here. I wanted to just had a few quick questions, and I'm sorry if this has already been asked, as I wasn't here earlier. But I wanted two quick questions. Were how often do you ride the RTA, and when was the last time you rode?
Probably Thursday. I was out of town over the weekend.
Yeah, to the councilman, through the chair, I'm a regular rider. We're a one-car household, and the last time I rode was last week.
And how often do you ride the RTA?
It's a lot more in the winter. I bike in the summer a lot, but I don't think a week has passed that I don't take the RTA.
Yeah, I would agree. Whether it's taking the trolley on my way to work almost every day, or taking the Healthline to a bar association meeting or some other meeting in the city, or if it's jumping on the Red Line to my parents' house or wherever else I'm going, I would say I for sure am using public transit on a weekly basis.
That's great to hear. I think we always want to push for more riders on the board, and I'm really glad to hear that. And from your past track record, I know the RTA board has been good about that. I wanted to talk a little bit about, speaking of the trolley. I know we just RTA just announced some cuts, including the trolley. I wanted to understand, there's going to be a shortfall that we're anticipating in the next 5 years, if not sooner than that. From your viewpoint, what are some of the challenges that you anticipate if you are confirmed for the next term, and what are some solutions or potential things that you're looking at that would be a way to steer out of this?
For point of clarification, are you speaking about the challenges specific to the trolley or just overall?
Overall, just the funding challenges that the RTA is facing.
To the councilman through the chair, they're coming. The challenges are coming. We mentioned this earlier, but there have been, the recommendations for the cuts. We have not yet definitively made a decision about what routes will happen, but, funding is an issue. The perception of the public and why we're cutting will be an issue. Having, new rail cars come in and funding continuing to, do what it's going to do will all be challenges. I think that from my perspective, at least, I think that the onus, this is going to be an effort of everyone, the board, the staff, the community, and our partners, to think about what is the value in transit, where do we want to see it going despite whatever external factors may be coming our way. And so I'm looking forward to working with everyone who is a part of this community, and making sure that we continue to provide the service that we are charged to provide, and that our customers are ultimately satisfied, and that we're doing the best with what we have.
To the councilman through the chair, it's an interesting time right now in that we have new rail cars coming, which introduce a lot of new possibilities and new opportunities. and we have budgetary problems that are going to lead to some amount of cuts. We were speaking earlier that the approach has generally been to attempt to make those cuts on the margins and not, for example, not cut entire routes that then would have to be added back, but instead approach it from maybe cutting frequency like on the weekends for some routes, and then we can just add that back if more revenue comes. With respect to the trolley, running the trolley costs over $400,000 a year, and we're making, and it's free, so there's not revenue coming in for it. Whether or not it's the right decision is to be decided. We haven't made any of those final decisions yet, and there are hearings next week. That said, it's a difficult value proposition when there is no money coming in. It had a sponsor, the trolleys in general had a sponsor 10 or 15 years ago that no longer exists. So that money isn't coming in. They also, during COVID, went from 3 routes to 1, excuse me. I look at it as that may or may not happen, presuming that it does happen in terms of cutting the trolley. If there's more revenue available in the future, and or if there can be other revenue sources that'll pay for that, because there's an argument to have a free trolley, free circulator in congested areas. We could also look at how that works. It's kind of one of those, the old line of taking a crisis and making an opportunity. If we have to cut it now, we can look at what the route is and how it operates in the future, if in a very clean manner, if that has to happen. Either way, it would take some kind of resolution when it comes to the budget problem and the fact that the funding has to come somewhere. So if we're running the trolley, we're not running service elsewhere.
No, I appreciate the thoughtfulness, and this is a challenge that is not solely on the board either. This is something that's going to require partnership, as both of you mentioned, and I'm motivated to figure out new additional revenue streams, or how can we prevent the death spiral that oftentimes folks have predicted for our public transit. So, whether that means maybe we can convince one of these bigger companies downtown who benefits from the trolley and they're forcing their employees back to the office, that would be a good time to step up and sponsor the trolley versus having that be cut. So that's hopefully something we can figure out on our end as well. But I appreciate your time and your service to the board. The RTA is something that we definitely want to make sure continues to serve for generations. It was one of the only things I asked my real estate agent when I was looking for a house in Cleveland was I wanted to be near a grocery store and near a red line station. Mm-hmm. And we want to make sure that continues to be the case. I mean, it's the big advantage of why we live in a city is public transit. If I wanted to drive everywhere, I'd go live in the suburbs. Right. So I appreciate your service and look forward to supporting you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, so as we are rounding out our conversation, I just really wanted to get an idea of what are the conversations, basically, to understand what are your current funding sources for the RTA, and what conversations has the board been leading and or guiding to look at the investment, overall a long-term strategy in order to potentially diversify the current funding of RTA?
To the chair. Right now, the funding approximately is 10% from fares and 90% from sales tax. We've had the 1% sales tax from the inception of RTA in the early 70s. The idea to diversify is very much there. This board has been very active in pushing transit-oriented development to try to create some built-in additional revenue sources. There is also there's an examination right now of what a levy might look like in terms of increasing the sales tax revenue. I also, this gets really in the weeds and I won't go too far. There is a state resolution, State Joint Resolution 7 is on the table at the State House that would enable land value taxation to exist in the state of Ohio. And I would say that should be on RTA's watch list if that actually happens, because it would be a different source of revenue and also one that creates an environment for more intense capital investment, which would mean more dense, more infill, less sprawl. That's at the State House level, but also one of those we're developing partnerships and taking an eye on what's possible. And so they're aware of that. But that's the kind of thing that is, from a board standpoint, I'm looking at those strategic higher level, have we looked into X, Y, and Z to try to diversify revenue.
Mm-hmm. If I won't echo that, although all of that is true, but I will say that we're also looking at, because obviously the conversation about levy and what's going to happen with that, it hasn't been finalized, right? And as we look at cuts and what revenue looks like in the future, I know that our staff is looking at more creative ways for income, especially over the next 3 years. We had that very conversation today. We had it at our last meeting, and we'll continue to have that conversation. We don't yet know what all of those options look like, but we are currently evaluating that. And again, look, I think our overall hope is and goal is not to cut any further, but just look at ways to bring money in, and that is to make sure that our operations can continue to move forward, et cetera. So.
Okay. And so I'm just going to end with just like 2 suggestions. One around like the partnership with RTA and keeping and helping to keep the city of Cleveland clean. I think it is vitally important that in partnership, wherever there is a bus stop, to have a garbage can. Literally. Like, I am like undertaking a strategy in my community, but I really think, especially as you think about new expansion, whatever, fine, even if it's not you all, you have to communicate with someone and in coordination, have a garbage can at every single bus stop. We have to work to clean our city. And visually is important. So I wanted to put that out there. Then separately, I know there was conversation about some of the cleanliness issues at some of the bus stations, things of that nature. I would really, you all should explore looking at Buc-ee's. I know Buc-ee's is just now coming to Ohio. It's a gas station, but it's a very huge super gas station. It's not that, but it's literally looking at the operations. How do they keep it clean? They have like the cleanest bathrooms that you will ever find. And so I think it's something in the model of Buc-ee's, and it's probably something to do with how much you pay people to get people to perform at a certain level. And so it may be worth RTA exploring the compensation of people who are tasked with cleaning, and then like the schedule and things of that nature to get the presentation. I think that's one of the things that we as a community really need to think about. What is the value proposition? Sometimes investing those couple of extra dollars in compensation will definitely help with the perception that we all need to embrace in the city of Cleveland. Visually, what people see make them believe this is a place that I want them to be. And so you are all definitely a part of that. And when we had this time together, I just wanted to offer that.
Thank you. And now I'll just also tell you, we're having continuous conversation about what's actually, what we know is actually happening versus perception of our riders. And so I'm taking this to the heart because I personally am prioritizing. That is something that I would like to see the agency continue to look at and improve. So I appreciate your.
And I think also, just the exploration of like community field trips, sometimes, hosting something together, inviting all of us to actually experience a day in a ridership of a Clevelander for all of us to ride the RTA. So just some suggestions. Are there any other final questions okay. All right. So to Madam Clerk, Mayor's Appointments Committee for consideration of the reappointment of Jeffrey Sleesman for the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority. Madam Clerk. Yes.
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 Wonderful. Next, we will have from the Mayor's Appointments Committee consideration for the reappointment of Anastasia Elder to the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority. Madam Clerk? Yes.
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 Okay. All right. Thank you all. Congratulations. And finally, if Ms. Emily Harper can come forward as we are looking at a new appointment. All right, good afternoon. How are you? If you can just take a moment to introduce yourself to us and share some why you believe we should actually appoint you to the Greater Cleveland Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority. My mind is going in different ways. So good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Doing well. Excited to be here. And I do have a prepared statement that I sent ahead of time, but if you hadn't gotten a chance to read it, I'd love to.
We don't want to hear it. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, go ahead. Go right ahead.
So, dear committee members, as a Clevelander and passionate advocate for public transit, I am honored to be nominated for the appointment to the GCRTA Board of Trustees. Public transit has made a massive positive impact in my life, and I want to make sure it can do the same for others. As someone who grew up in a rural area of Ohio, public transit was never an option, nor was it something I thought about when moving to the city 11 years ago. It wasn't until the RTA became my only means of getting around that I began to comprehend what a true asset and lifeline it is for our region. Navigating our network of bus and rail came with a learning curve, but the patience and kindness of RTA operators showed me what great transit can be. Not just a service, but a community. The more I rode, the more connected I felt to my neighbors, my city, and Cleveland's potential. The belief I have in the potential of this city and this transit agency are what compelled me to become an outspoken, visible advocate for a transit-forward region. If appointed, and upon the approval of my employer's ethics officer, which I am pleased to say happened at 5:12 p.m. yesterday, so that is not a concern. It is my sincere intent that in this position, I continue to advocate for an inclusive transit system that serves riders of all ages, abilities, and their communities. Public transit in Ohio is laden with challenges, including rising costs, difficult funding environments, and an ever-increasing need for services. As a board member, I will represent and advance the interest of all Clevelanders in overseeing the delivery of reliable and equitable transit service. Thank you for your consideration.
All right. Thank you so much. I will start with Councilman Casey.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Madam Chairwoman, to Ms. Harper, just one question since you brought it up about the ethics and your current employer. Are you allowed to receive the stipend? Did they address that?
That was-
Greater Cleveland RTA provides?
Yes. The approval went through the ethics officer. I had to submit it through a workflow. This is an outside paid employment opportunity.
Right.
It was approved by the ethics officer. It was approved by my executive leadership team
Okay,
member and the VP.
No, I just want to make sure, because we ran into that problem before where there was a board member who was also a public employee,
Right.
and there was just some controversy. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that not only can you do it, but that you can also get paid.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Next we'll have Councilman Shaw.
I wasn't ready. I'm not.
Councilwoman Santana.
Hello, Emily. To the chair, I'm just curious to know what gets you excited about getting appointed to this board, and have you, I know in your resume you have strategic planning, so I know that you think, you have a vision for whatever you do. And so what are those goals that you're hoping to accomplish if you get appointed?
To the council person through the chair, I just get really excited about the idea of where I don't have to drive. So that is probably one of my main goals, is to be a steward for a system that is reliable and frequent and becomes a system of choice for the people of Cleveland. To address one of the comments from earlier, RTA in some neighborhoods is known as return to automobile. Shouldn't be that way. We should be able to access all areas of the county, of the region, and be able to offer frequent, reliable service.
Got it. Thank you.
Councilman Polensek.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of honorable colleagues, Ms. Harper. Are you a resident of the city of Cleveland?
To the council person through the chair, yes. I've been a near West Side resident since 2015.
Okay. And I see you work for the Federal Reserve.
I do,
I only have one question.
yes.
Is my money safe? That's what I want. Okay.
I can tell you my badge doesn't even get me near the money, so.
Thank you. I'm fine, Madam Chairperson.
Councilman Shaw. Nope. Okay, so I will ask you just a couple of things. What ideas do you have that you believe can help Clevelanders know what is going on with the Greater Cleveland RTA? I know there's some conversations about some of the difficulty and the challenges that will be embarked due to funding for RTA. Do you have any ideas on things that the board and RTA in general can do to inform or better inform the community on what is actually happening?
So, Councilwoman, there's always various channels of community outreach, social media, public notices. I know that RTA, anytime there are service cuts or public hearings, those are always posted within the lines. I personally feel there are probably more effective ways of doing that and would be interested to collaborate with other members of the board to understand what are some low cost or no cost options as a way to get the word out of this is where we are with funding, this is where you as a rider can use your voice to affect change within the system and help design a system that works for you and for the city of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County as a whole.
And what is your understanding of your the work that you may have to do outside of actual board meetings? Do you have an obligation to do things outside of board meetings to RTA, or does all the work happen during the board meetings?
Councilwoman, to my knowledge, there is an expectation to serve on committees. I don't necessarily know at this time what committees need more representation. I will say that committees of interest to me are the external relations one and the organizational services and performance monitoring.
Okay, and to follow up with that, do you have the actual time and capacity to fulfill your obligations to show up and be an active board member?
I believe that I do. I have full support from my employer and my direct manager to adjust my schedule as necessary to attend the required meetings. And I tend to have a lot of personal drive when it comes to affecting change in my city. So I find the capacity.
Okay. And if appointed, what does success look like you for your board representation on the Greater Cleveland RTA's board after 1 year?
Would be probably increased reliability and increased ridership.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions? Okay.
So moved, question.
For the Mayor's Appointments Committee, consideration for the appointment of Emily Harper to the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority. Madam Clerk, call the roll. Yes.
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 Thank you. Congratulations, Ms.
Thank
Harper.
you.
We'll be in touch. All right, and this will be the conclusion of the Mayor's Appointment Committee.